So I told you that we had run a tutoring program for years, and when I was at Broadway back in the 80s, I'd helped make that tutoring program better, and again, felt great about it. Got a lot of awards in the city, got a lot of notice. 50 young people, 50 volunteers tutoring one-on-one for 3 days a week, every week, except for about a month before school ended, because that's when the volunteers wanted to stop. And I would get tutors. I would ask for tutors from other churches. I would ask for tutors from Lilly Pharmaceutical. I would ask for tutors from United Way. You know who I never asked for tutors from? From the neighborhood, right. Because these people are poor. They don't know how to do this, right? So in around 2004, we had hired a guy in partnership with the Development Corporation, a guy in our congregation who lived in the neighborhood, and we had given him the job title, the Roving Listener. His name's Diamond Hargis, and his job was to find out the gifts and talents and passions and dreams of people and to help the Development Corporation build a strategic plan based on the gifts around us. So he calls me one day and he says, you got to talk to Maya. I just met this woman. You got to talk to her. I said, well, why do I got to talk to Maya? And he said, because she runs a tutoring program out of her house. I said, what do you mean? He said, you got to talk to Maya. So I call Maya and I said, Diamond tells me I should talk to you. And she says, yes. And I said, why? Tell me about this tutoring program you run. She says, well, I grew up in this neighborhood. I've lived here my whole life. I'm in my mid-30s. I work AT&T and nights. I live in the house my parents raised me in. They're both dead. But during the summer, when I get up at 11 o'clock, all the kids on my block come over to my house and I tutor them. And I said, what do you cover? And she said, I cover everything from phonics to Sophocles. And I said, well, could you explain that? And she said, well, if they don't know how to read, we do phonics. If they don't know how to read, we do Sophocles. And then every Friday, I have a barbecue in my backyard. And their families come over and they present what they've done. Whoa. Now, we shouldn't be asking her to volunteer in what we're doing. We should be asking, how can we be a part of what you're doing? Yes. So, we do this thing at Broadway where the last Sunday of every month, we celebrated, for several years we celebrated ministries that had died, ministries that were continuing, and ministries that were beginning. Well, she'd been doing this for a while, so we invited her to come. She's lived in this neighborhood 34 years, 3 blocks from our church. She never set foot in our church. And one of the ways I knew that was she came in and sat in the front row. And she sits in the front row, and it comes to that time of worship, and the person stands to lead that part. John stands to lead, and he says, Maya, will you please stand? And she had explained to him, I'm not going to talk to the congregation. I'll talk to people afterwards, but I'm not going to speak in front of everybody because I'm shy. So he explains to everybody what she does, and then he does what we always do with this. He says, will those of you who will support her with your prayers, your presence, your gifts, your service, and your witness, please stand? Well, everybody stands, but she doesn't know that because she's in the front row, right? But then he steals a little bit from the wedding liturgy. And he says, will all of you do everything in your power to uphold and care for this person in her ministry? If so, will you answer, we will? And they said, we will. And when they did, she went like this. And when she landed, turned around, facing the congregation, 2 things that had been invisible were now visible. We had not seen, there are people doing remarkable, holy, good work all around us. And if we hadn't found a way to begin to pay attention to that, we wouldn't have known it. And the second is, she didn't know there was a whole congregation full of people who wanted to encourage and bless and support and be a part of what she was doing. Right? Things that were invisible were becoming visible. And it feels like it's continually that challenge for us to continue to find ways to see what we had not seen and known before.